It's my pleasure now to ask Julie Evans to come up. Julie is an extraordinary light in education, and someone who I try and push her as hard as humanly possible to turn up the volume, because the work that she's doing is so important. I don't think there's any research survey of its kind in the country that is as important as what Julie has been able to do with Project Tomorrow and the Speak Up survey. We need to do better by using the data that's available to us as educators, as researchers, as practitioners. And so I bring you Julie Evans. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you, and thank you so very much, Alan, for inviting me. Thank you, Dean Gallagher, as well. So I am very happy to have this opportunity to be here to share with you some of the findings and some of the research that we've been doing. Project Tomorrow, as Alan said, is an internationally known nonprofit organization in the education space. We're particularly focused in on what students are doing in terms of learning both in school and out of school. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the drivers for innovation in education. As you all know, there are many different drivers in education, many different things that are impacting what schools are doing or trying to do. We have a particular interest right now, as Alan mentioned, in the digital tool space. So how are digital tools and content and resources transforming the education process? We do that through our Speak Up research project, which is an annual survey that collects and reports on the authentic feedback of K-12 students. Yes, we do poll kindergartners, their teachers, their parents, the administrators, and the community members. Because as Alan mentioned, we think that that holistic approach to the ecosystem is the best way to not only understand the drivers for innovation, but to think more about building the capacity of our schools and districts to use data such as this in a very high impact way. Now, one of the key findings that we've had over the last 15 years of doing this work has been looking at the interrelationship or the interconnectivity between these three concepts: the concept of engagement, which we've been talking about today, the idea of digital tools supporting that engagement, and then the third gear, shall we say, about this idea of how do we make sure that today's students are well prepared for the future and whatever that might mean for them. Now, in many ways, these seem pretty commonplace. Of course, those are important gears in education, and of course, they're interrelated with each other. But in fact, there are many different challenges that schools face. They definitely face opportunities with approaching their mission in this way, but they also face some really interesting challenges. And so sort of the state of all of this, the state of the mix of all of this, is probably best represented by this particular quote. This particular quote from Suzanne Collins, who you may know as the author of The Hunger Games and Mockingjay. So this is the reality in our schools today, in many of our schools. Our leaders are looking at different things. They are seeing different things happening in their schools and in their classrooms, and they think they know what they're seeing. In fact, they may not. Or they have a perception of what it should be, but they can't see the evidence of it. And it's a little bit of this confusion in terms of, are we seeing the right things? Do we know what needs to happen in our schools and districts today? It's a little bit, folks, like this particular image. So some of us in the room may look at this image and we may see a face. It has a deep set eyes, a high forehead, a strong nose. Some of us may see a woman that looks like she's in a swishy skirt, kind of walking through leaves. Some of us here in this room probably see both of those images. Some of us in this room may not see either of those images. We all look at things through different lenses. In the conversation about learning and engagement and the use of digital tools, we're bringing to the conversation our own perceptions, our own experiences, the exposure that we have had to these tools. And that is an overlay on what our expectations are going forward. I will tell you, folks, after 15 years and over 5.4 million surveys that have been submitted to us through Speak Up, our students have a very different set of lenses that they are using to think about learning, to think about engagement. And we have, as Sir Ken said, a lot to learn by listening and observing those students as we go forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple little opportunities for some learning here today. I'm not going to call it a pop quiz because I know that scares people, and we just heard from Sir Ken about assessment, so I don't want to go there. But let's see first what our audience feels. So if you have a preference for reading, is your preference to use a printed book or to read something on a device? Who would say their preference is to read a printed book or article? Okay. How about to read something on a device? Okay, so we have a nice split here. What we've learned from students is a little bit different as well. So for our youngest students, 2/3 of them say their preference is to read on a digital device. Only a quarter of high school students feel the same way. Well, why is that? It has to do with their experience. It has to do with the exposure that they have had. Our very youngest students, our kindergarten, first and second graders, and even our pre-K students are spending a lot of time with interactive devices, including doing reading with their parents. These devices are highly engaging, highly interactive. They have opportunities for them to contribute to the conversation in ways that printed books that their older siblings used at the same age may not have had the same role for them. So we see these different lenses even within the students. We actually have multi-generations of students today. So we can't paint with one brush and say all the students have the same perception of what they need. Let's play another little one. So what do you think about this? The use of technology within learning helps students develop creativity skills. Who thinks that's true? Okay, who thinks that's false? So a few folks do. Let's see what the students tell us. Students actually have a very keen appreciation of the outcomes of using technology, not only for engagement, that they're more motivated to learn, but in fact, they see it around a different set of outcomes. They actually talk in terms of how it increases their achievement level. They talk in terms of the personalization that Sir Ken mentioned. They also talk about skill development. So 50% of middle school students told us that the use of technology in their learning lives helps them develop creativity skills. It also helps them develop critical thinking skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, the opportunity to get along with diverse groups of people and understand different cultural differences. There are a whole host of different outcomes that students talk about regarding technology. Quite often in our schools and districts today, unfortunately, it's more singly focused on just a few of these. So we'll do one more, folks. And I'm going to take a page from Sir Ken's book here and think about reimagining education. So what if we could, and maybe many of you here in the audience have this opportunity, have the opportunity to reimagine or to design the ultimate school for today's students? What types of technology could possibly drive student achievement to some new levels than they ever have been before? Well, we see a host of different types of tools here. From the student perspective, it is a pretty easy answer, folks. The students tell us all of the above. In fact, for today's students, learning is based upon a very clear-cut vision that the students have through their lens, based on their experiences, their exposure, that they want learning that is socially based. They want learning that is untethered from the restrictions or limitations on the resources in their community, in their school, or even their teacher's knowledge. And they also want learning that is digitally rich because it provides context and purpose to the learning process. So for the students, they think about all of these tools and many more as being part and parcel of the learning experience, not something that happens on the side, not something that happens occasionally, but something that is an inherent part of their learning modality today. So as Sir Ken said, we have to continue to learn from our students, and there is much research to be done on this. As he said, and I loved it, I wrote it down, we're just at the beginning of this. This is not Jell-O yet. We don't have it all together. And so the research that we're doing is very important. We are thrilled to have our partnership with the Rosier School to help us with a lot of that research. So we're going to continue to come forward with new findings and new ideas, and in particular, new ways for schools and districts to build up local capacity, to change what they're doing, to meet the vision of the students. I want to congratulate the center On the launch today, I want to thank Dean Gallagher for her leadership and Alan Arkatoff for his leadership. We are thrilled to be part of the family and so happy to be here today. Thank you very much.